Oh, we'll tell you. Don't worry. You will not. You won't miss it. Don't worry. Okay. Yeah. Sorry, I'm a little bit out of it. Like this whole evening has been just like a colossal like series of unfortunate events. Okay, I don't need to have that. So, a little bit. It's not too bad. Yeah. 3.99. Oh, I should tweet also. That's a good thing to do. Oh man, that is. How did the L get after the rest of the sentence? Uh, so that it's there. I'll throw a thing in it. Oh, I have to bring up Discord in another window. Message everybody. Yeah, that's how it works. Well, they make up for lost time. So yeah, yeah. And now you never have to worry about it. I remember doing baby signing time to try to get because we had the same thing, and now it's like I have to close the door to get any peace and quiet. So as I say to my children often, you're at an 8 and I need you at a 3. Oh, I need to log into Twitch. Yeah, it's fine. It happens. It's. Yeah. I mean, we have a cat walk through the show on a regular basis, so it shouldn't be a problem. All right. I'm gonna make it so they can hear us. We're not recording yet, but um all right. Hi everybody. Oh yeah, like when I found out that I was doing this whole like cannonball run to pick up Twin B, then I had to like go find like a frozen pizza and throw it in the microwave to like wolf down. I had to eat it with a knife and fork because like I couldn't pick it up when you microwave like the Red Baron pizzas. Mm. Soup is good food. Yes, yes it is. Yeah, I mean depends on the ramen and the soup. I don't know. I mean, the the children live off of ramen if we don't stop them. So, you know. Yeah, no, the top ramen is not that's not living. Yeah. No, it's not. We actually have a really fancy ramen place like 20 minutes away that we go to very infrequently, but it's very good. Like they do like the squid ink noodles and stuff like that. Like, you know. Cat. Oh yeah, it's time. It's time. I'm here. Yes, 399 is very close to 400 Grand Arcanum. That is exactly how numbers work. Yes, we are painfully close. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just gonna be another show. Yeah, yeah, it's fine. Yeah. Maybe like see if Cinder's available, or so you can't either. Oh, you can't hear at all. Okay. That can you say things? Oh, I know why. No, I know why. I know why. Because I did the. No, it's not you. It's me. Hold on. I remembered I had to flip over. Try saying something now.
Something. Now.
Okay, there we go. That should be better. I remembered I had to flip the window for the cameras, but I forgot that I had to do it separately for the audio source. So
Cool.
I will maybe, after running into this wall repeatedly for the last 3 weeks, try to find a better way to do this so I can idiot proof it, because I am the idiot, but for right now it's
We
working.
are currently holding the show together through like duct tape and grit. It's just
it's spitting a prayer. Yeah.
Isn't getting a Discord like phone call to stream to like Twitch a complete pain?
It's not bad. It's just like it's a little finicky because like I have an audio source set up that's specific to a window, and the window changes every week because we have a different group chat that I do the call in. And if I was smart, I would just use a channel in the Discord that we would use for this, and then that would solve the problem, but I'm not smart. So, because if I had like the same window with the same title, then it would not be an issue, but I apparently am Wile E. Coyote, so
Like Coyote.
Yeah. I am, but I am not actually a super genius, so. Okay.
Weiss, I'm not done with that. She's actually a dog.
The dog
I
with
have
whiskers.
woken up to her like licking the remnants of my dinner in a bowl or something next to me, and I'm just like, what is happening?
Okay, well let me know. I mean, whenever you're done eating your soup, I think we should be
2 minutes.
Yep, no worries. It's soup. Eat your food. I want you well nourished. But
that's a stretch.
Okay. I want you nourished. Maybe not well nourished, but nourished. Or at least like, with something in your belly. Excuse me. And oh, that's right. I can't do that.
Ha, green can.
All right. I'm going to start recording. Whoops, don't do that because that's opening in the wrong place, and now it's going to make everybody go away. So I'm going to start recording. And yeah, so if we could all start recording, and then we'll have that rolling a little bit.
Okay.
You good?
Yeah.
Drink some water.
I have ginger ale.
Okay, fine. I guess that's liquid. That'll do.
Indeed.
Okay. All right.
Do we tweet?
I did tweet. I tweeted. I posted in the Discord. If you want to retweet, did I retweet? I don't remember if I retweeted. I did not retweet. I will retweet. So yeah, if you want to retweet, and then I'm good when you all are good. So
good.
It's
possible, Rizen, that you have played more Hearthstone than us this past week.
It is actually incredibly possible. Well, I mean, since Tuesday, yes. Maybe not over the weekend, but
sure.
Yeah. since Monday night, I suppose. But Okay, so I guess we can. Oh, whoops, wow, I need to bring that back up. Okay.
Okay.
So are we ready? We're all recording?
Recording.
Okay.
I am now recording.
Okay.
Okay.
So 3, 2, 1, clap. Oh, it's always fun. 3, 2, 1, clap. Okay, that is almost useful. All right, starting the show in 5, 4, 3, 2.
I grant you permission to speak. Shadows hide you. I am listening. Our paths converge.
So good to see you.
Hail to you! Never lose hope.
Here, Fred Shadows.
I hear you. It has only begun. Fight on, friend!
Hello and welcome to episode 399 of Coin Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. It is Thursday, June 8th, 2023 in the evening. Coming to you from Nomergon, Ohio, it's me, Edelweiss. And from Northrend, Massachusetts, we have Wicked Good.
Hi.
And joining us from Ongoro, Kansas this week, we have Rizen. How are you doing?
Hello. Great to be here. Thanks. I'm doing well.
And from all around the world, we have you listeners. If you are able to, please leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify or wherever you listen. Helps other people find the show. And yeah, we're going to kick things off once again with a short introductory interview, not like a long interrogation. But Rizen, you are, I asked you on the show because you're a teammate of mine, and we've been on a team, Twigoy Gaming, for quite a while together. And I think you have a really interesting background and relationship with Hearthstone. So why don't you tell everyone a brief history of that?
So, I've been playing Hearthstone since Ongoro came out. The way I was introduced to the game was I was playing poker, and one of my poker friends literally, he looked at me and said, "Whatever you do, do not play Hearthstone. You won't spend time playing poker, and it's going to cost you a lot of money." So just like when anyone tells you, whatever you do, don't press the red button, that sort of rattled around in the back of my brain for a long time. And then around the time Ongoro came out, I ended up having a significant amount of free time. So I was looking for a sort of a hobby, and I picked up Hearthstone. I played Arena for a while and tried to build a collection, and did the usual stuff that everyone does, and sort of got in the game from there.
So had you played card games besides Hearthstone? You mentioned poker, but had you been into Magic or any of those other ones?
No, I had played a tiny bit of Magic. There's a lot, actually, I think the all-time money leader in poker is a former Magic player. So there's a lot of Magic that goes on after everyone's done playing. So I was around it, but I didn't play a whole lot.
Interesting. Yeah. Are you sure your buddy wasn't trying to sabotage you by okay, I'll say don't do this thing, so he'll do this thing, and then
Maybe.
I won't have to deal with him. He's too good at poker. Yeah.
Maybe.
Can you tell us a bit about your poker history?
Yeah, I started playing poker professionally in 2006. I started playing seriously in 2003. I don't want to give a huge poker background, but there was a big poker boom when Chris Moneymaker won in 2003. It was on TV all over the place. And in a former life, I was a software engineer, so I was doing computer programming. And the place that I worked, most of my boss and all of her friends were really into it. And I was not in a place in my life where I could afford to lose a lot of money playing poker, but I did think for career reasons, it was probably good to go to the games when I was invited. So I bought some books, studied a little bit, and deposited $50 online and sort of practiced so that I wouldn't be terrible when I showed up, and eventually ran that $50 up to significantly more than that. And then quit the same job. I turned the notice to the same boss 3 years later.
So that was back when it was on ESPN too, all the time, and the World Series.
Yeah, it was on the Travel Channel. Yeah, been on ESPN a handful of times.
Yeah, I remember watching like World Series of Poker when it was on ESPN like a lot back in those days. I never played other than like, going on to like some free, like Yahoo Poker or whatever, like trying to play it and then realizing that that was not for me, but that I was not going to go anywhere with it. But I was always fascinated with it, and especially, I mean, the data nerdy part of me with like them popping up like the statistics for when you had a certain set of whole cards and then like what that is to win the hand, and like knowing that people are memorizing some of those percentages, and like I just kind of like was in awe of everything that's going on, never being able to like actually put any money into it to try it myself, but always seemed like fascinating to me from the outside.
Yeah, I mean, I actually think that Hearthstone's probably an infinitely more complex game than poker. I think that anyone that is relatively good at Hearthstone, if they put time in it, they could probably be good at poker too. Like the poker meta doesn't change. Like
Sure.
it's 52 cards. It doesn't change. If you spend time working on it and studying it, like I'm not saying that anyone could be world class at poker, but I think anyone that spent time learning it and had the same skill set it takes to be good at Hearthstone could have some success in poker.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's more the interpersonal piece of it at like a live table that's where I would end up falling over. Right? It's like one thing when you're like at a screen in front of somebody else and they can't see you rolling your eyes constantly. Like I do when I'm playing against anything that I don't like, right? But it's I'm not very good at disguising my emotions when I'm playing a game, so
I never played a hand of live poker until I'd been professional for a few months. Everything was online. I do not like I should say I do not like, I've had a lot of fun with the interpersonal part of poker, but like I'm a terrible liar, which does not make for a particularly good poker player. I have a hard time keeping a straight face. I don't like being in huge crowds and things like that. So yeah, I feel you there for sure. Like it's definitely out of my comfort zone.
It kind of reminds me of, there's this one show I watched, an anime about mahjong, and they were like making a mahjong team at their high school, and one of the people was like a wizard, but specifically playing the numbers online, right? So like, good with all the probabilities and doing the perfect line, so long as it was online, but was just a mess when it came to sitting down with 3 other players like in person. Like her game was not on point with once you add that personal element. But
yeah, it's a very good thing.
Online poker, from what I've heard, has kind of gotten a bit messed up with all like the bots and stuff. Is that true, that it's changed a lot? Or
I mean, there's a whole rabbit you could go down, but yeah, there's not a whole lot of bots, but there's what's called real-time assistance. So
okay.
Computers have figured out how to like brute force and quote unquote solve poker. So
there's trackers. There's deck trackers in poker.
Well, there's more of that. But if you had an iPad next to you, you could potentially be using a solver to try and figure out the best plays to make in real time. And there's controversy around that. I mean, online poker, part of the reason I started playing Hearthstone is just online poker. It got a lot more difficult over time. People got better. There were laws that passed. There's questionable legality in 45 of the 50 states right now. So it's not as easy to make a living now as it was before. And particularly when COVID happened, like the idea of sitting at a table with 9 other people all breathing towards one another was not something I really wanted to be a part of. So I stopped playing live at that point.
That makes sense. But have you ever considered, before it got gutted, playing Hearthstone professionally?
It was actually, I wanted, like, professionally is probably a bit of a strong word, but I wanted to compete for a long time. I mean, I was doing the streaming thing. I was top 100, 200 pretty regularly on ladder for a while, and joined Sugoi so I could have some practice partners and work on improving my game. That's not an aspiration, obviously, with the current state of things. It's not an aspiration anymore, but I even gave up on it long before then.
Yeah, there was a certain point where it was like both the tournament grind in terms of open cups and the ladder grind were just like, it's hard to do that if you've got an outside life. So, and
It's harder now if you have
reward.
to grind, thousands
Well,
of games to try to get a top 10
yeah.
finish on ladder. Like good luck doing that with like children and a job that expects you to show up and be functional the next day. Like
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's where I lucked out. I really got into poker before I had any kids, and then
yeah.
sort of continued after I had kids. Hearthstone, I think I kind of just where I hit at the top was basically kind of, I think that's kind of the peak of the ability that I was going to have, which was still like, I think it was good, and I was happy with that, but it wasn't enough where certainly under the current landscape I couldn't compete.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's not like there's DreamHack lands or anything like that anymore to just be able to go and play in a tournament. I mean, those are few and far between, and certainly not, at least maybe in Europe, but not in the U.S.
Don't remind me. DreamHack Atlanta was my 40th birthday present to myself, so
Oh,
I had a ton of fun doing that. I miss those events for sure.
Yeah.
yeah. Man, I think the ones I went to were Denver, which that was like, I don't even know if they've done that again in Denver, and then Anaheim. But yeah, hugely fun memories, particularly when we can get. I don't know if you had a bunch of Sugoi people when you did DreamHack Atlanta or no, or was that before?
There was a couple. I joined Sugoi like it was like 2 weeks before DreamHack Atlanta. It was right before it.
Okay.
I met Glee was there. I can't. I feel like I met at least one other person there, but there was a handful of Sugoi people, but it was not a large contingent by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, I think Tom Locke was able to go this year, but like not too many of us. So we'll have to get the gang together once again at some point. Even though the Hearthstone events are smaller, I'll probably just go draft Magic. But to get back to stuff about you, Rizen, just some quick hits. Oh wait, no, I forgot one other question. How do you feel like your poker background has impacted the way that you approach playing Hearthstone?
The two biggest things, like I think, as far as mental game goes, like it has a huge impact because I mean I'm used to like I've played games of chance and skill where there were. I mean, I went deep in the 2006 World Series of Poker where first prize was $12 million. I didn't win, so no one. I finished 24th, I think, that year. But I mean, any one game of Hearthstone is not like there's random elements that are going to happen. People are going to generate random cards. Being able to take that in stride. I'm not going to say that I never get upset, but the mental game I feel like is definitely a strength. Hand reading's a strength too. Like I'm used to having to keep track of cards, know what's out there, so that was very much second nature. The toughest part of Hearthstone for me to pick up is more the mechanical things, like I had to go back and watch Trump's teachings, if you remember those, like battle. Just learning those sort of concepts and tempo and just basic card game concepts that like who's the beat down, all the old Magic stuff as well. Those are things that took me a while to learn, but the hand reading things were very easy. Not very, but much easier for me to pick up. It's very second nature.
True. Yeah. I remember I was like started playing around a time when often you were not allowed to use a tracker at tournaments. And so I would actively practice for tournaments by like, I'm not going to use tracker. Like it was this weird thing where I was a late adopter of HS Replay because I was like, well, I can't use it in tournaments anyway. So what's the point? I would rather like get better at, keeping track in my head of this stuff. Now, of course, they're like, how are we going to stop you? So, everything, they let people use trackers, but it was a very particular kind of, sort of keeping up in terms of memory and everything.
Or being very good at note taking, where they
Or
allowed
that.
you to have pen
Yes.
and paper.
Okay, I can't remember. You have a pen,
Slow writing.
and a pen.
Yeah.
But no tracker.
I think people still sometimes bring a pen and paper, but not as much. I'm trying to think of like what stuff. There are a few things that your tracker is not necessarily keeping track of for you. that you might
Yeah.
want a pen and paper for. But,
I pulled out a notebook on stream a few times, usually Murloc Holmes related, but because that's just the way I roll. But there was like when that undead resurrection control priest was around, and I needed to remember like what the hell was in my Zarella. I would try to start writing it down, and then I inevitably like missed like 6 things along the way and was still surprised. So I couldn't even. I tried like taking notes when I was casting a couple times. Like I think there was probably when Bomb Warrior was a thing. I remember just trying to keep track of like how many bombs were in the deck, and I couldn't even do that. It was like there's too much stuff going on, and I was like, oh yeah, no, it's not 5, it's 6. Okay, never mind. But that's why Deck Tracker exists. So
yeah.
I'd write things down, but I don't think I'd be able to read them later. I was told I should be a doctor. Handwriting is awful.
Yeah.
Well, all right. Some quick hits, and then we will get into the regular show. What is your favorite class?
It's either priest or rogue, so I'll offend everyone equally with those two answers.
I feel like those do not usually go hand in hand.
Yeah.
It's generally one or the other.
I really like decks and classes that have dynamic win conditions, which I'm not sure that's related. But priest and rogue, a lot of times you're generating a lot of cards, you're doing a lot of things. So the game, no 2 games are the same, which is what I kind of like about those 2 classes.
So you must like the new mage decks that are around now too.
I don't know that I've played the new mage decks.
Oh yeah, Spooky Mage. Oh yeah, Spooky Mage and even Burn
the
Mage.
The slow version.
Yeah, where you're running raw math and you're running all kinds of stuff that generate like prismatic elementals and volume ups to get extra copies. And oh yeah, I'll send you Tic Tac's list at some point. You'll like it. It's
Absolutely.
Yeah, that it's basically just like generating a whole bunch of random crap and hoping a lot of it's solid alibi.
It is kind of odd what form of generation sometimes like offends people's sensibilities, right? Because we don't like thief rogue stuff, right? Mostly because of Shadow Step, I guess. But then priest is the same way in terms of its generation. It's just on a control game. And then
I mean it's a narrower pool, right? Because it's just taking your opponent's crap and beating them over the head with it. So that's a little bit different than just like reaching out into the whole of Hearthstone and pulling a card out of your butt, right? Like it's a different. It's more honorable, I would say.
Priest does require like some planning ahead too. You have to steal a card on turn 3. You might need it on turn 9. Whereas a rogue, a lot of times it's okay. I generated this card and I'm going to use it this turn, and I have to figure this all out in 75 seconds or however long it is you get.
Yeah.
Well, obviously they noticed some kind of similarities there too, since they did priest rogue dual class this time around with the plagiarizer. So next we have, what is your favorite deck of all time?
So my favorite deck of all time is ETC Warrior with a close second to Malagos Druid. So.
Okay, very good picks. Yeah. For those that may not know, this is the Rush ETC, right? So it was like broomstick and all that, right?
Yeah, it was. I really liked it because sometimes you would just do the combo and you would copy. You'd use the broomstick, you'd rush a bunch of minions and do a bunch of damage. Other times you'd make like 3 Rattlegores, which was always fun. Just your win condition, like the amount of times I actually did the combo to win the game was maybe 1 in 4, 1 in 5. Figuring out your win condition each game was part of the fun.
Yeah. And Bloodsworn Mercenary was a heck of a card. I miss Bloodsworn Mercenary so much.
Oh man, if we had that in Rage Warrior right now, oh boy.
I mean, it'd be filthy. Like that on Anima Extractor is disgusting. But yeah, I miss it. And do you have a favorite Hearthstone character?
I mean, I like the bartender when makes me feel good when I play Battlegrounds. I don't play Battlegrounds much, but Hearthstone's just a game. Like I feel like the bartender kind of embodies sort of the whimsicalness that goes along with the game. So
we're saying Bob specifically, right?
Yes. Well, I mean, there's a million different skins, but yes.
Yeah.
And then non-Hearthstone question, coin concede question. Do you have a preferred sandwich order, or are you not a sandwich person?
I'm not a huge sandwich person, but I live in Kansas City, where we're known for barbecue, and there is a sandwich around here that I will get every once in a while called the Rocket Pig, which is probably exactly what you imagine it is. It's like pulled pork, bacon. It really, honestly, it's a heart attack on a bun, which is why I only have it once every couple of years. And when I do, I go into a coma and sleep for like 2 days, but it is delicious.
All right. Yeah, it sounds
That is an acceptable
sounds
answer.
tasty,
Yes.
but does sound like a lot.
It's a lot.
All right. Well, any final words before we jump into the regular show?
No, I'm excited to talk Hearthstone with both of you.
All right. Well, Wicked, why don't you go first on in terms of life and ladder? I know a certain game came out.
Yeah. So Diablo came out. I did not. I bought the standard edition, and I started seeing the tweets over the weekend, and I immediately regretted my decision because the digital deluxe and the ultimate editions would give you access to play like through the prior weekend starting on the 2nd, and the regular one only opened up on Monday night. And so I was sitting in this chair watching all these tweets go by and being very, very jealous. And I actually looked on, because I bought it on the PlayStation because Morning and I are playing couch co-op, and I actually went to look like, can I just upgrade to the digital deluxe to just like start playing, right? And I could not. I could upgrade to the ultimate edition, and I realized that paying I came to my senses enough to realize that paying $30 to play the game for 3 additional days was madness. So I just seethed. So I channeled that angry energy into Enrage Warrior, and I played a lot of Enrage Warrior over the weekend. So I started with it at like Plat 10, and I played a few games with. I played it a bunch last season. I didn't really play it since the month rolled, and since the mini set came out. And Jam Session makes the deck a lot better. Just being able to play it on an egg on 2, or use that as an extra POC. Being able to cut the Wild Pyromancer from the deck helps a lot. And I was struggling. I played the original version. I don't know. I think it might have been No Hands Gamers List. And I did really poorly with it. I went like 1 and 6. And then I realized that I didn't have my emotional support treasure guards in the deck. And so I switched those in. I ended up finding a different list, and I took out like the instrument tech and the and the Acolyte of Pain, and I put in the treasure guards. Because treasure guard is just, it really ties the deck together. It's just like a big wall that buys you a lot of time. You can, if you draw it off of a Chorus Riff, it's like a 4/8, which is a big body. And it also helps make your Roaring Applauses better because it's a Naga. So you can have that down with an egg or a Foul, and then be able to draw 3. So it just makes that card a lot better too. So I played it a lot. I went pretty much up to like Diamond 2 with only dropping like a couple of games. Like it was a pretty, I think I was like a 75% win rate at one point, up through Diamond 2. And then I started hitting a bunch of control decks, but it ended up being like a 65% win rate up to Legend with it. I did run into a mage who played a Prismatic Elemental. Speaking of generating BS win conditions, I put a big board together. They Twisting Nethered me because that's a card that mage has. And then I reloaded my board. I put a big board together and forgot about the audio splitter that they played a couple turns prior.
Ooh.
So I got Twisting Nethered again. And then I looked around like, how did that happen? And then I looked at the audio splitter that I saw go off and thought about. and then realized that that was my own fault and then conceded. So that was a little bit less good. And this was all before people started figuring out Paladin, and we'll start talking about that soon too, but it's not as good going into Paladin, and it does have some draws where it's just like it just falls over, but I feel like it's still a really strong deck, and it's something that at least I understand how to play, and feel like I have agency with it, which is generally like the one thing that will get me to jam a deck for a while. It's not even necessarily its aggro or control, it's just that like I feel I have agency with it, and it's not like I'm relying on top decks a lot to be able to get myself over the line. And like even when I have kind of the awkward draws, I at least like know how to get through the early game and get to a point where I can try to eke out a win. Because you do have a lot of outs with the deck and a lot of different ways that you can win with it. Sometimes you just get, completely destroyed by a single taunt, but that'll happen. But in general, I feel like it's a really strong deck, and I kind of like I do understand it pretty well after putting so many games into it. So and then
Wow.
Diablo came out, and that's all I played since that came out.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So Rizen, looks like you've also played a little bit of Enraged Warrior, and then a couple of other things. I'm a little confused. You've got Doomhammer Paladin here.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the pure Paladin version that runs the Wind Fury weapon, and
Right.
it kind of it. I enjoy it more than I've enjoyed a Paladin deck since like Libram Paladin, because like you have the typical pure Paladin stuff where you're flooding the board with minions, very linear sort of tempo based game, and then also you can sort of, for lack of a term, you can combo out in the middle of nowhere. You can play. You have you have a Wind Fury weapon, and you have cans that buff that. You can either like basically make it Reno Jackson so that you heal yourself to full and do like 14 damage to your opponent. If you even stick a single minion, you can stick two of the I forget what they're called now, but the 2 mana cards that will buff both the minion and your weapon.
For Quel'Thalas, yeah.
Yeah, that one.
Yeah.
I'm bad with card names. I'm sure this won't be the first time that I'm like that card.
We both are, unless we're not the ones saying them, and then we can remember them.
Yeah.
So I've been having fun with that deck. It's like, I don't know. To me, right now, it's clearly the best deck, which I enjoy winning, so that's always good. And I played a little bit of Enraged Warrior, and then I've been trying to learn the new spell Demon Hunter, which I guess it's like the old spell Demon Hunter, but it's more combo focused around the 2/4 now.
That's Steno, yeah.
Yeah, the Steno combo. So it kind of goes all in on that instead of using the 2 mana card that makes it so that it does damage to your.
The Sinful Brand, yeah. Because Sinful Brand, since it got nerfed down to 1 damage, yeah, it's just all in on Steno for the most part. And I still don't really. I've run into it and I lose to it. I don't really quite understand what happened. It's like, what direction did the truck come from?
It's one of the few decks that I feel like does decent against Paladin right now, which is part of the reason that I've been playing it. You can actually, you can often pull off your combo before they get enough mana to be able to do their Doomhammer things.
Yeah. It turns out that the other deck that can do aggro lifesteal things is also good against it. So yeah, it's a very weird time where there are multiple decks that are better at burst healing than Priest that are aggressive, and I don't care for it.
Yeah, what I'm kind of worried we're headed towards, and maybe this is something we'll talk more about later, but I'm kind of worried we're headed towards a Viper meta. Where just it's
we're already there.
Yeah, we're already there.
Yeah.
And I just think any meta where you run Viper as a core card in most of your decks is not particularly fun.
Yeah, it's one of those things where, like, honestly, I was a little bit surprised that it took this long, along with instruments being a core piece of Festival of Legends, right? The instruments all being weapons, right? The Warlock one was good, keyboard is good, but a lot of them were just like good, but not, this is how I'm definitely losing good, right? Whereas something like the dual class Shaman Paladin weapon is like, there is a direct like causality in terms of I blew up their weapons, so they did not Wind Fury me to death. Whereas if you blow up a keyboard or some of these more utility things, like you don't necessarily know how much impact it's having or not, but you blow up that weapon that was going to get double buffed and hit you for 1,000,000 damage. Like, all right, you know it's worked.
Yeah, it's kind of worrisome. Sorry.
Go ahead.
What's kind of worse, like you can generate more weapons using the Paladin taunt. Like I've had like extra weapons in my hand because it's a Paladin card.
Oh.
And like you can use the amalgam, the 2/3 that you can use to create a new one. If you use it on a beast, you can generate more Vipers. So I've played a game where I've had to have 3 Vipers before. I've had played games where I've had 2 or 3 of the various weapons, and it's. I'm worried that we're going to degenerate to that. I hope not, but that's kind of where it feels like things might be headed.
Well, yeah, and Rage Warrior has a pretty good weapon too, in a different sort of way. But like that's certainly worth destroying. The Totem Shaman version I saw had double of that weapon as well.
Oh, carving chisel. Yeah. That's
it's
got the horn also. Yeah.
Like it didn't have bloodlust and it had double horn. I mean, I guess they were like, well, they didn't want too many spells because of Magatha, and they had schooling and totemic infusion or whatever. Evidence.
Something. Totemic something. They're all totemic things.
It's one of those things where I'm almost like, well, if people are going to have a bunch of Vipers, maybe I should just go the Bloodlust route, right? Like, because it's not what they expect. So, it certainly could be a weird time. One of those kind of canary in the coal mine situations, right?
Yeah. I mean, the Vicious Syndicate report just came out, and we're going to talk about this a lot more later, but like, tier 1 is pure Paladin and Rage Warrior Spell Demon Hunter. So, pure Paladin has Disco Maul and Horn, and Rage Warrior has Imbued Axe and Remornia. Spell Demon Hunter has Glaivetar. So, and the Scythe, but the Scythe, is just like a little bit of extra damage, but the Glaivetar is draw if you let it get picked up. So if you let it get built up rather. So like that's like a meta where you would probably be justified to put 2 Vipers in your deck, because you can always trade them. But if you're running into those, I think when I looked at HS Replay, I have to look at it again, but when I looked at it yesterday, I think pure Paladin was like, I don't know, like 20% of Diamond 1. I don't look at Legend for popularity, because popularity has like all of the, all of the people who are at low Legend who are just happy to be there. But Diamond 1 is, oh my God, 33.86% pure Paladin at Diamond 1 last one.
Oh, man.
So, I mean, the Vicious Syndicate report came out today and basically told everyone to play pure Paladin. So, it starts at like, it's 15% at Diamond 5, and then it goes up to 21 at Diamond 4, 25 at Diamond 3, 28 at Diamond 2, and 34 at Diamond 1. So, yeah. I mean, if you're literally 1 out of every 3 opponents is a pure Paladin, then, you may as well run Vipers.
I feel like it takes being crazy powerful for people to actually play that much pure Pally too. So like, because it's not usually something they identify with. Maybe this weapon version is a little more appealing because people like from hand damage, right? But I think it's one of those things where it's like it's so good that people are like, okay, I'll play Paladin.
I mean, people like winning. Right, so it's like, well, I mean, not that that's been enough to get people to play Paladin in the past, but I mean, when it's winning like this much and this quickly, like, I mean, like the last time the Paladin was this good was like when we were like nearly begging everyone to play Libram Paladin right before Renethal came out, but that was a really slow, grindy game. These are not necessarily slow, grindy games with this pure Paladin, so I think that makes people a little bit more inclined to want to play it.
Yeah, the fun hand damage helps a lot too. Like the worst thing about playing Paladin in the higher ranks is the fact that like players are good at playing against it, and if you're off board, you feel really helpless. Like you don't feel like you have a lot of agency over your games. But now, if you can get just a little bit of chip damage in, you can assemble the pieces in your hand to pull off a combo. I think you can do like 24 damage relatively easy if you stick a minion. I could be
Yeah.
doing that my math wrong there, but
It's
you
probably
can do a
even more
lot
if
of
you have
hand
if you have
damage.
a Kotori Lightblade, you can get a 4 quality loss on it, then you can probably get even more out of it because the weapon the hero attack gets doubled when you play the spell on him.
I'm
Yeah.
not even sure whether all of the lists would have Kotori or not, just because you've got to squeeze in the gain 3 attack Mana Thirst Lifesteal one.
Yeah, you just cut some of the bad paladin minions, I guess. So, you know,
Uh,
I've definitely been double 4 quality lost in the last day or so. So
Sure. Yeah. I think there's several versions, and all of them have, this weapon and some
Yeah.
kind of attack buff stuff, because
yeah, imagine
it's
Wind Fury
just
weapons
that
are
powerful.
good. Who knew, right?
Well, in terms of the other way to burst heal, besides that Mana Thirst thing with the paladin weapon, uh, the DK Hunter minion, the 6
Hollow
mana
Hound?
3/6
Yeah.
rush lifesteal, that is a house. That is a Reno beast. I have been playing it in DK. I've been seeing CDC and others play it in Hunter. It's quite effective against other board-based things, particularly if you're able to buff it up. Hunter being able to do that with like the bananas can be pretty huge. It's actually like playing in Rage now. You got to be careful
Oh yeah.
about doing something like summoning, those taunts out of the fire spell. If you've got like a big minion, it sometimes can be better to just like not make those smaller things and keep your one big minion so that they can't, rush in.
Yeah. You
Uh,
can use like the location in the Thori Balor egg to play around that a little bit.
yeah.
But you need to remember that that's a card, which I definitely forgot several times when I was climbing and playing against a hunter and thought I was fine, and then realized that I just gave them 3 minions all side by side that they were just able to clean up really nicely. So yeah. But you can kind of stick either play on either side of the location or kind of stick the location in the middle if you play the I forget what the fire spell is that makes the two fours. But you can play those in the middle and kind of play around that. And you need to be doing that against Hunter and Blood Death Knight when you see that.
Yeah. And I have been playing a hand buff DK, which is 2 blood, 1 unholy. The 1 unholy is just for Nerubian Swarmguard, because that card is ridiculous if you buff it. Totally filthy. And I think it really was the missing piece, having this rush lifesteal minion, because hand buff, in order to have a place, you need comeback mechanics. That's why you need minions that multiply the stats, by you getting more out of the buff. Things with taunt or rush, lifesteal, that kind of thing. So this is like the perfect thing, because with that cleave, you really capitalize on it. So you've got your great hits of like that, No Muncher, the Swarm Guard, and then between getting Harmonic in this set as well, you have Harmonic and Blood Tap are the only regular spells in the deck. You still have like the Undead Nerubian Vizier, right? That one, and School Teacher. So those can give you more things, but otherwise it's just those 2 copies each of the hand buff spells. And Magatha. And Magatha has been hugely impactful for, I think, so many things, like Menagerie Warrior, like this deck, just anything that was like, well, we only run a couple of spells anyway. You just run Magatha, because even if you end up, giving them a couple of things, you're drawing a ton. And, Famished Fool was only ever draw 3 anyway.
Yeah.
So,
It's amazing how much in retrospect you like Famished Fool just sucks.
Yeah.
Like once you have a
It's a
card that actually does what you
3/5.
want to do,
Yeah. Yep. And I think people get hung up on like, oh, and and it works because if you give them something, well, they can't utilize it as well. And I'm like, and I don't care. Like, yeah, I mean, it's added bonus if my spells are like not great for them to use. Mostly, it's like I'm just playing the odds, and it's much better for me than for them most of the time. And I had some great games where I played the Discord and whatever, the flip side, the buff 2 minions for +4/+4.
Dissonant. Yeah.
Yeah. I always want to say Dissonant Whispers, but that's a spell in D&D, totally unrelated. But yeah. And so buff 2 minions +4/+4, hitter Nerubian Swarm Guard, and turn 4 just said, all right, 3 5/7s, go. And that Blood Decay did not make it because they could not build up enough corpses fast enough for Corpse Explosion. Blood Boil is not going to cut it. Yeah, it's a little too many stats for them to handle. And my personal favorite thing in that deck is that I run Outfit Tailor, which is the 3-mana 2/2.
Oh yeah.
That Battle Cry, give a minion stats equal to this minion's stats. So it just kind of sits in your hand, getting buffs from Blood Tap or whatever every once in a while. And then my sort of like late game, if we need a little extra juice, is the Malignant Horror, I think it's called.
Yeah,
4 mana,
the one that
2/4.
replicates itself. Yeah.
Exactly. Spends corpses. So even if that hadn't been getting any buffs in your hand, if the Outfit Tailor got them, you can play it, buff it with the Outfit Tailor, and then you get like a pair of 6/8s or whatever. And if they don't deal with it, you've built up corpses that it'll keep multiplying. And worst case scenario, you can always just buff the hero power, the Ghoul Charge. So like it gives you access to burst damage through that charge from the hero power. So I just love the way it all ties together. And even though I know it's like not meta, I'm like one of not too many people playing this thing. It's been a ton of fun, and that's probably what I've played the most of since the balance patch.
I did run into a non-zero number of these this weekend. And I don't think I queued into you this weekend because I would have remembered. So
I didn't make a post, so it's clearly okay if a bunch of us are coming to the same conclusion separately.
I mean, maybe once Pure Paladin gets taken down a peg, maybe that'll be the next way to go. But we haven't heard any news about that. But we should probably talk about the news. So
I suppose 40
why don't we
minutes
do that?
Gadgets and Gazette always gets the scoop.
So we don't have a lot of news this week. We do have some miscellaneous things that have happened this week. So we did get a hotfix patch. So that is came out a couple of days ago, and just kind of that is not there it is, sorry. So it's just a small server side hotfix. There was a bug with the new cards button in the collection, and that was something that they disabled because it was causing some problems. There was a bug where the card back bug, where if you didn't have one assigned as a favorite, it would just give you the classic card back. Magatha doesn't show the cards that she draws anymore, which is kind of a silly bug. And then there was a bug with Upbeat Duo on Putreside's creation and Battlegrounds, where it only grants the base undead, not the actual creation that Putreside hero made. And then there was an achievement that wasn't counting core set cards. So that's been in place. There are still a number of known issues that are still outstanding, and a few more that have gotten reported over the last couple of days. The arena leaderboards are not up to date. They're working on that. I think we talked about the Lilith card back showing in the collection, but not actually being able to be purchased with gold. So you would actually get the Dark Wanderer, the original Diablo card back. I don't believe that's been fixed yet, at least as of when I was looking at this. There's still the visual bug where if you burn a card, it looks like it's coming from the opponent's deck. And then there have been 2 new ones that got added later this week. They changed the way that Fizzle Snapshot works in this patch, where it was if you made a copy of it before this patch, it wouldn't. It would just be empty, the copy. It wouldn't give you any cards, and they've changed that so it would give the copy would give you whatever the original one had. But now what happens is that if you steal your opponent's snapshot through something like an identity theft, now that copy is empty. So I mean, I guess justice for Fizzle, I don't know, but so that's a bug that's there that used to work the other way. So that's been reported, and there's also some issues where you're actually able to generate triple rune cards through Discover. I think they're calling out Volpera Scoundrel and Hipster. It seems like it's mostly happening when you're discovering outside of Death Knight.
Right. If you are not a Death Knight, it seems like you can hit the triple rune cards. So like Countess and Paladin has been able to get Mograine or Marogar, right? Since those are legendary triple runes.
Right, yeah.
And then, Hipster would be a big one, right? Because obviously you're playing against the DK in that scenario. I guess I don't know if Hipster would do it if you were a DK yourself playing against a DK. My guess would be no, based on how it seems like this has been playing out.
I don't know enough about how it's working to say definitively, but yeah, there's a lot of like weird, and I've been hearing like a lot of different like hypotheses around what it's doing, and like I know the Countess is definitely like one of them that's been getting Marogar or getting, I guess Frigidar is not that big of a deal, but Marogar in Pure Paladin is pretty good because you have a lot of things die, and then you just get a lot more things. So that's pretty good if you can make it happen. Yeah, so I don't know exactly what they are, and they don't want to give away the store with a bug report like this, but just be aware that that's something that is happening. The team's looking at it and they're trying to fix it. We also, so Summer Games Done Quick was last weekend as well, and there was a speed run of the Knights of the Frozen Throne solo adventure in 21 minutes. So,
oh my goodness.
Yeah. So they did, I don't believe they did all 10 classes for the final battle. They just did all of the battles leading up to it and then the Lich King. I watched a little bit of it. They used a disconnect to get through like 40 seconds of Jaina turning into a Death Knight in the first battle, and and they obviously had pre-built decks for each encounter after the first one to be able to take advantage of that. So that was obviously that's what they're going to do in order to be able to beat it as fast as they can. But yeah, 21 minutes. So, go watch that. It won't take you very long. There's a lot of explaining of how Hearthstone works during the run. So, it is definitely designed for an audience that has never played Hearthstone before, and they explain what minions are and what spells are and things as they go along. So enjoy that, but you'll be able to tell what they're doing.
Typical game. Right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But I mean, that's the SGDQ way anyway. Like they generally have somebody who's not doing the run, like explaining how things work for the lay audience. So, it's just a little funny hearing, Hearthstone explained like you're 5, like while you're watching the run.
I still remember seeing for the first time like the blindfolded Sekiro run and having the person explain how that worked, because obviously the one doing it was super focused with like blindfold and headphones and everything, because you're only using audio cues to play Sekiro, which is insane. And just hearing about how it was like this guy and like 2 other people had done this before, and how they realized it could be done and developed all these methods and why certain things. Yeah, the explanations are good, but it would be funny to come from like playing Hearthstone all the time and having someone just explain the basics, and it's like,
oh, these are minions. Each one of these is called a minion. Like, oh wow, okay, yeah. This is what it's like normally watching it, SGDQ, but for a game that I actually know. So that's what this is like.
Right.
Finally, the Diablo Tavern Brawl is live. So you can go ahead and play that to get your Lilith card back. You should have a legendary quest to get the card back. It is going for 2 weeks. They're doing the Tavern Brawl this week and then repeating it next week. So you can do it once each week to get a pack. The first time you do it either week, you will get the Lilith card back. It doesn't tell you anything going in, so I'll throw up a spoiler horn now for those of you who want to go in completely with no prior knowledge. So I'm just gonna yammer for another like 15 seconds to give you a chance to hit the fast forward button. But for those of you who want to have an idea what you're getting into, so there's the Dark Wanderer comes up with 3 secrets, and I don't remember exactly what all of them do. I know one of them eventually makes both heroes take double damage. And there's a lot of AoE that they do. Basically it starts out as an Imp Warlock effectively. Like a wild Imp Warlock. Keep in mind that this is a Tavern Brawl from several years ago. So
Right.
it's a lot of the newer cards are not going to be in the Diablo Dark Wanderer collection. Like I saw an Implosion for the first time in like 3 years when playing this, but so they have a number of imp things. They have a lot of AoE, and then once you get the Dark Wanderer down below a certain health total or down to 0, then he transforms into Diablo, gets an entirely new deck, draws a hand of 5 new cards, and then starts at like 150 life. So one of the other secrets is both players like fill their hand and all the cards cost 2 less. I think that's another one. But that's so what I did in Rage Warrior, because there's a lot of AoE, and if you have 2 Anima Extractors on board, that makes a pretty big Grom. And especially because both heroes take double damage. Though one thing that I did hear on Twitter today, if you really just want to get the card back, the cards after Diablo transforms technically did not start in Diablo's deck. So Steam Cleaner will wipe them out.
Okay.
That's how I did it.
And
Well
it's funny. It's funny because they ban certain cards, like they ban Eater of Secrets and anything that like destroys secrets, but Steam Cleaner's legal. So, you can go ahead and do that and fatigue Diablo that way.
This is interesting because I had a completely different approach. I don't know if the secrets are the same every time. I mean, I
think
know
they
they are
are.
the same within a run, but I don't know if it's guaranteed. Like, I thought there was a pool of different secrets it could be. But anyway, the ones I got were like spell damage, and then eventually it doubles the damage, and the card reduction thing. So there's a wild deck right now that might be getting changed soon because it's a negative play pattern. Priest deck, where you just draw your entire deck and then Mind Blast and like use Fizzle to shuffle in. You like use Fizzle to shuffle in the Mind Blast, and then you there's 1 copy of Shadow Visions, so you Shadow Visions for a copy of the snapshot. You get your Mind Blast back. You've got 2 Radiance in play, so they cost 0, and you just like rinse repeat. The snapshot gives you the visions back. You visions for another snapshot, just Mind Blast them to death. So you could actually just go through both phases, and since it is solo content Brawl, there's no turn timer. So unlike if you're actually playing this in Wild and you have to practice your APM, playing against the computer, you just can at your leisure make sure like, okay, I've got enough mana, we can do this, and just casually Mind Blast the Wanderer and then Diablo to death, which is actually pretty on point with the Wanderer in terms of how the Wanderer goes out. But so that's a good way to do it. Admittedly, even with no turn timer, I was being impatient and I like screwed up the combo. So it still took me a few tries before I actually did it, because I, of course, didn't look anything up and didn't realize, I have to like not draw the snapshot because you have to get the copy off of Visions every time. So like, And it's just like you have targeted draw for minions. You have the two clergies that when you overheal them, you draw a card, and then the 2 radiant elementals, and then the fizzle. Those are the only minions in the deck. So it's very consistent.
But don't play Magatha in that one.
No. You just hand them 5 spells.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't look anything up either. I just queued up Enraged Warrior and happened to work out. So I figured I'd figure out after the first time, and there just wasn't a second time. So but yeah, that's about it. We haven't really heard anything about any patch timing or anything like that coming up. Presumably there will be. We're about 10 days out. We're about a week out from when the mini set release, so presumably we'll have something coming soon, but I guess we could just kind of go over to explanations and talk about that there.
Well, hang on a minute. I think so. As like, I mean, look, I'm not as good at this as Hat, but if I had to venture a guess, it would be like what we get another round of balance sometime soon. Like we got the mini set last week, so I guess as early as next week.
Yeah,
and then,
it's a little bit weird because it was on a Wednesday, right? So
sure,
like normally it's on a Tuesday, and then we can kind of plan for the following Thursday. If we usually it's 10 days out, but that would put it on a Friday, which is kind of weird, right? And there was also a holiday in there too. So, but yeah, I mean, like if we're putting it like normally we get the content patches like the first week of the month, roughly, right? So we would need to have a balance patch kind of before that. So and presumably they're going to do something between now and the next content patch. So, that would probably put it certainly not this week, but next week would be put in play, or maybe even the week of the 19th, maybe if it takes them a little bit longer to, they could take their time and collect some more data. I don't think this meta is necessarily in a spot where people are jumping up and down and crying for changes, but 35% pure paladin will leave a mark.
It will get people to try and figure out how to target it, which I do think is always interesting when people do have the time to actually be like, well, this is the enemy, so let's all pile on that and figure out what we can do. And sometimes it does balance out, but I guess if we did say some kind of balance next week, then or the 19th or something, then that would put like a couple weeks, so maybe announcement first week of July for like a mid-July release, if that sounds right.
Yeah, though I guess July 4th in the US is the Tuesday, and a lot of people take the Monday off too because it's a long weekend, so it could like that. I don't know if they're going to want to get the content patch out like the week of the 26th, but get it out before Independence Day, or if they would do it that week, and then the timing's a little bit weird, or they just do it on the Thursday. Holidays always kind of screw this up a little bit.
I think for just like announcement of the new expansion, they would just do later in that first week. I don't know.
They still have to ship a patch though.
Yeah, I guess
because they have to they have to put the pre-order in.
They have to put the pre-order. Yeah.
And usually the the announcement legendary that they give out to everybody, right? So
right. So I always seem to forget about that, and then it happens, and I'm like, oh yeah, this is a thing.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to want to do that on a short week when a lot of people are going to be out, but we'll have to see. But I mean, either the week of the 26th or the week of the 3rd, which would mean that if it's the week of the 26th, they probably want to have a balance patch probably next week. But, you still have another week after that if you need to.
Hopefully I get a couple weeks of the expansion before I have a child. That
would be I would hope so. I hope you do.
one last hurrah of streaming new expansion before I'm just like in a daze. All right. Well, so we can move on to talking about the meta.
So I guess with all of that said, why don't we talk about the meta and then what we think might have to change about it?
So I haven't put much in the show notes here because we just kind of open table discussion about how we're feeling with this meta. I think oddly, like, I've been playing a little less than I would sometimes, but it has nothing to do with the way I feel about this patch. There's actually quite a few decks I like and things I want to try. Clearly, Paladin is a power outlier, so something's going to happen there, I think. But I don't know, in terms of just feels, where are you two sort of sitting with this meta right now?
I mean, I'm enjoying it, but that's because it's still new, it's still fresh. And when the mini set dropped, I think I played 5 Death Knights in a row, so I'm happy that's not what's happening anymore. I'm sure I'll get sick of playing Paladin as well. Although, like you were saying earlier, if Paladin is 30% of the meta, we're going to see people do everything they possibly can to counter that. So, Vipers is what we talked about as an obvious one, but even like taunt minions can help. Things like that. I'm interested to see what people more creative than I am with deck building skills and things like that can come up with. There may even be some deck we haven't even discovered yet. It's still pretty early. So I'm definitely curious to see what direction it goes. I'm still feeling good about it. I'm sure I won't feel as good about it if I queue into like 7 straight Paladins, but right now I feel good.
Yeah, the thing that strikes me about this meta is that the games are very long. Or can be very long. Part of it is obviously my deck selection, but even against the aggro decks, like, the games take a long time. Like, I after I hit Legend, I switched over to a Spooky Mage that Tic Tac had posted, because I just, if there's a control deck that Tic Tac's posting, I'm probably going to try it. And I played against a Paladin, and I ended up taking them all the way through their entire deck and still lost the game. And, like, that's the aggro deck in the meta, right? Like, those games, like, when I talk about playing control, it's like, well, usually, yeah, the games don't take that long because, the games end, right? Like, you run your opponent out of stuff. It's starting to feel like a Bakugan type of meta, where even the faster decks can go very long. Like, one of the things that made, like, Recruit Hunter so exhausting to play against in that meta was the fact that it could just get access to lifesteal, right? Like, it would, because you play Deathstalker Rexar, it would get you a Vicious Scalehide or whatever. I forget if that was the lifesteal. I think that was the lifesteal minion. I forget if that was the lifesteal one or the poison one, but whatever. And you would just make a bunch of those and you'd be able to go for a while, even if your actual game plan of, like, copying crushes and devil swords and hitting your opponent in the face failed, right? Like, you still had plan B and you had a lot of survivability. And it feels very similar to that, with, like, Paladin certainly having a lot of lifesteal available to it. Demon Hunter having Arcanist and Unleash Val, and just being able to go back up to 30 whenever it wants to after turn 6. Hollowhound is a lot of healing. Yeah. And, like, I've played against a number of these big, not even big beast hunters, but, like, the quote unquote face hunter. I don't know that I really consider it face hunter, because, like, we're playing 1/4 taunts. So I don't know if that's really a face hunter, but they're calling, I certainly I can't call it mid-range hunter because all the hunter mains will come and skewer me. So,
I don't know. I would be on mid-range hunter. It runs Quel'Thalas, right? The weapon. Is that what?
Oh, Hope of Quel'Thalas, yeah. Yeah, and it runs Hollowhound, which is a 6-drop, and then that's a lot of bounce back in those types of games, and it can really extends some of those games. So I don't know how I feel about that, especially as a priest main who is regularly bursted down because the class doesn't actually have that much healing.
I'm sorry, if a hunter is up against an enraged warrior, and they like win because they go Hollow Hound, banana, like clear your board and Reno. I don't think we can call that deck a face hunter. Like,
Listen, I'm not going to psychoanalyze the hunter mains. Like, first of all, Sidisi would kill me if I tried, but you know, I know that they have an aversion to calling anything mid range, so and let them have their face hunter, I guess. I don't know, but yeah, it's like a lot of the games going along. Like I've been taking the train to work again because we're going to office 3 days a week. I can't queue a game on the train platform because I'm not convinced that it's going to be over in 10 minutes when I have to get on the train. And as soon as I get on the train, like my internet connection gets very sketchy and I end up disconnecting. So it's like I have had to find other things to play because I can't actually play. I can play an aggressive deck, but I'm not convinced that the game's actually going to end in the 10 minutes before I end up disconnecting. It's a weird place to be again.
just let me refine Blood Tree and Aggro Druid, because that deck hits the ground running. Let me tell you.
Go talk to Lorinda, because he was trying to do that at the beginning of the season, so you can compare notes with him.
Yeah, you know, you've got the hero power stuff too, right? So you're buffing your attack. And with the refresh thing, I mean that can just be a Pirate Blast, right? Hero power.
They sure were trying that, power. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Definitely the high highs, low lows on that deck. But no, I think I agree that a lot of the even aggressive things, I think in large part because they all revolve around Magatha, we've got aggressive decks not gassing out because they're drawing a crap ton of cards. You look at Menagerie Warrior, it has 2 spells that draw it between like 2 and 5 cards, depending on the board state. And then a minion that's a 5/5 that draws them between 3 and 5 cards. So it's just a lot of sustained pressure for these decks. And I mean, that deck also can 1 Amalgam Band to stabilize, right?
Multiple times, usually.
Yeah. And, you know, I was working on a Mech Paladin, which of course then your spells are Radar plus Magatha, right? In terms of draw. So you sure as heck aren't running out of cards in that, because you've got the draw and then also a little bit of generation out of pair of Amalgam of the Deeps and pair of Gorilla Bots. So there's a lot of minion heavy decks that utilize Magatha and can just go forever in terms of their cards, which means that you're in this weird state where you need to either be able to like just generate a crap ton of resources or counter pressure and kill them. And yeah,
and by resources you mean solid alibis.
Yeah, sure.
I mean, you know, it's and I guess if we're going to talk about power outliers, right? Like clearly Horn, like the Horn has got to be a card that probably is a little bit too good, right? Like I'm kind of shocked that card doesn't have can't attack heroes printed on it, because like there are a number of weapons like this. Like there was the lifesteal weapon for Paladin once upon a time that had can't attack heroes printed on it. I don't think that's the only time that a card like that has had that text on it. There was also the warrior one where you could basically just attack as many times as you want, but you couldn't attack heroes.
So yeah, there's been a couple in warrior. There was Fool's Bane, where you could attack as much as you want, but couldn't attack heroes. Had 3 attack. There was the 2 mana weapon that had attack based on how much armor you had, and so that one couldn't attack heroes. There was briefly a thing where you would get crap ton of armor and then use Ash Tongue plus Silas to like Silas the Ash Tongue over and then just basically shield slam their face, right? Like,
Yeah.
But I think just those and then the Paladin Lifesteal one were the ones that can't attack heroes. Might be wrong.
But I mean,
It'd
like
be
the rest of the text on that weapon, right? Like very much implies that that's supposed to be like a removal tool, or at least that's how they intended it. I mean, obviously they let it into the wild or the standard without putting that tag on it. So they probably expected that they were going to be able to use it to hit face. But there's also just like there are so many weapon buffs in Paladin that just make it turn into a machine gun. And it's really hard to play around that even, right? Like you can't put taunts in the way because it'll just remove them. I mean, yeah, it takes away a charge, but like realistically, you know, they take the first turn to get rid of your minions and that are going to get in the way, and then they clear your face with the next turn. And unless you're running a Viper and you can actually remove it, like that's not really a solution. And like we were saying, like we took Paladin from what, you know, was a middle of the road aggressive deck, right? It was very good at the very beginning of the expansion, and then it dropped off as people just kind of figured out how to play around it, into the best deck that has exactly two decks that have a positive win rate against it, which are Spell Demon Hunter and Spooky Mage. And Spooky Mage just because of Solid Alibi. Like Solid Alibi will stop the weapon, especially when you have 6 of them. Then that will stop the weapon. But other than that, just like Steno being able to just, you know, do Steno things and kill you before you can get a chance to do anything with it, and then be able to use the big board that the Paladin's making to be able to heal back up to 30. But other than that, it's got a positive win rate against everything now because of, and the biggest change was just the weapon.
Yeah.
Do you think it would be as much of a power outlier if it was always going to the face for 3 and never? I'm even sure programmatically how that would happen, but if instead of allowing the buffs, because clearly, like it takes whatever minion you're hitting and changes it to a 3/3.
Right.
So if it was always hitting for 3 instead of having these massive buffs, I don't think it would be quite as egregious.
So let me answer your question with a question, right? How many Doomhammers have you seen since rotation? Because they took Rockbiter out and they took all the other weapon buffs out, right? So like, I haven't seen a single Doomhammer since rotation. So I don't think it would be that bad if it could not get the buffs, but I don't know how you could like not have the buffs go face and allow the weapon to go face without confusing everybody along the way.
Well, if the weapon just couldn't be buffed.
I don't know how you word that.
I don't know how,
It's unprecedented, right? That's not the kind of thing they've done before.
Well, I mean, even then, you're not buffing the weapon, like you're buffing the hero's attack, right? So like Feast and Famine doesn't care if you have a weapon, it's boosting your hero's attack. So even then, right, it doesn't care about the weapon that you have equipped. So I don't even know if you could do it.
Right. You'd have to say like your hero always attacks for 3 or something weird like that.
Or this weapon always does 3 damage, right? Because it's setting the minion to 3/3. This weapon always does 3 damage, you know, regardless of your hero's attack or something like that. I mean, but it would be, I don't even know how you would do that without confusing everybody, because that wording seems like it's going to exceed the text box if you have to do that.
So do you think the solution is going to be in like higher mana cost then, so you can't combo it out as easily? Or
it's the second turn that kills you though. Like if they don't have a Viper, because I mean, if otherwise, so the two things that happen, right, are either, you know, they kill you on the second turn, or everybody's running 2 Vipers and they just hold it, but then everybody else is running a 28 card deck, right? If that's the case, because it's like the first turn, I'm very rarely dying. I mean, you could tell me if you feel differently because you're playing the deck I'm playing against it, but I find I'm very rarely dying to the turn that they play the weapon. It's always the following turn when they've got 10 mana to clear everything out of the way and then play all the buffs with whatever mana they want to.
Yeah. Which does mean that like Viper's very impactful there, right? Because people are not typically doing everything in the same turn. But as we talked about earlier, that's not necessarily kind of a healthy direction we want to go. I did note that like the version of Totem Shaman that I saw in Aegis Replay was still running the weapon. I think because Doomhammer is still just 4 damage, right? That first turn, whereas like going 6/6 is better than 4/4/4 if you're trying to get 12 damage over a limited number of turns.
And Totem Shaman can struggle with removal too, right? So like that's
right.
So that's it's also probably more used as a removal tool to clear away for the minions to go face than anything
Especially against something like Enrage Warrior, right?
Yeah.
You're getting more out of that defensive element. I saw a suggestion from, I think it was Meaty, right? That maybe you could just kind of double down on it being more of a defensive tool and say it only has 1 attack and it sets the minion to 1/1, right? Like it's kind of this weird thing where if you want it to maintain its intended, I think, defensive capability, that whatever it sets the minion has to be the same as like whatever you reduce the attack. That's true. That would be pretty off class though.
Yes.
Certainly for Paladin, Shaman always has weird crap anyway, so I don't know about that one. But
I mean, but Can't Attack Heroes does the same thing, right? Like, I mean, the only thing is it removes some flexibility. To be fair, right? Because then you can't go face with it.
Dies if you make it Can't Attack Heroes.
Yeah,
I mean, it goes in a different kind of deck, right? Like, I don't think it dies. I think it goes into Control Paladin at that point.
Yeah, well, sure. Yeah. I think if you make the attack and set stats to 1/1, then it is in a lot of ways a stronger defensive tool because you're taking less damage when you clear whatever you hit. But then, I mean, you basically need the buffs for it to be an offensive tool. But at the same time, it doesn't remove the problem of if they do just have the juice, right, and gain +5 attack, you're still taking 12. I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess it depends what sort of what characteristic of the weapon they want to preserve.
Yeah, but I mean, the fact that it's getting lifesteal occasionally is also a big feels bad, right? With Feast or Famine. Like, I mean, I know that that's not built into the card, but it's like when you think you've got them down, and then all of a sudden they play the weapon and they play the Feast or Famine, and they heal for 12, right? Or is it?
It's like
14?
playing Kingsbane Rogue, right?
Yeah. Oh, don't get me started. Oh, but that's and again, like, you have limited ways to interact with it. Like, taunts don't help, right? I mean, taunts will keep them from in your face, but ultimately, like, you can make as big of a taunt as you want. It doesn't matter. And they're not, even then, right? Like, they're still getting net positive healing off of that swing because they're removing the attack or reducing the attack to 3. So as long as if they played a Feast or Famine, they still get the full benefit of anything beyond the 3 attack for the weapon, in terms of the healing, which is also kind of unusual for a lifesteal effect.
Yeah.
It's an interesting spot. I was trying to think of how they might fix it, just because I hate to complain about something in the meta without at least trying to think of what a possible solution would be.
Yeah.
And I don't really have a good one there. Like, I do feel like raising the mana helps a little bit, because there's a lot of times playing the deck where if I am afraid I might get vipered, I can just hold the weapon, and on turn 10, I mean, you can 6 mana weapon, 2 for KF loss, and as long as you have anything on the board, that's a lot of burst.
Right.
Yeah.
Defensively, I mean, there's things other than, like, I've used the Righteous Protector sometimes when my opponent puts their because it then becomes a 3/3 with Divine Shield. But that's that's a Paladin Mirror. That's not super helpful. Right. There's not a whole lot of other Divine Shield taunts you can put in the way in other classes.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, like, Solid Alibi is one of the few things that's working, because like that is one of the only ways that you can just prevent all that damage from hitting you, is by reducing it to 1.
They don't attack into the alibi in that case, right?
Yeah, but if you get enough of them, then they just, then you, I mean, like, you're assuming it's just one solid alibi. It's never just one solid alibi. You know that.
Sure. But I almost feel like it's like you run alibis so that you can find your Viper, right? I feel like we're kind of going in that direction potentially.
Which is not, I mean, that's not a great, like, now we're into like the Bolivian tree lizards from the Simpsons, right? Like that's, and honestly, if like the best way to stop it is to play successive solid alibis, that is not a way to live. Like that's not a meta that anybody wants to be playing in, is just playing against repeated solid alibis every game to counter the paladins. That's no good.
I mean, I'll do that. I'll play
I
the
mean,
solid
so will I,
alibis.
but you know, like most people are not us, so you know.
I'll throw rewind in there. I'll just, you know. But I think the other way that people have been addressing Paladin that we talked about was with the spell DH.
Yeah.
So you've played that Rizen. I don't think we have.
Yeah, I played.
So you're getting under the Paladin, but you're also a lot of times killing people from hand with Sitheno. Did that feel like another like really powerful thing? I think Sitheno has been a card that a lot of people have kind of felt negatively about for a while. Is that maybe another target? That
like for nerfs or
like if they hit Paladin, are they going to also hit Demon Hunter, or is it more like, well, they hit Paladin and that was the main target? I don't know. How does it fare against other decks, I guess is my
I mean,
question.
I had a lot of success against it, or success with it against a lot of decks. I think if nothing else, it might get nerfed because it's not exactly a fun play experience to play against for a lot of players.
Sure.
To just, you know, basically turn 6, you heal to full health, and then by turn 7 or 8, you are playing 20 spells plus the Stheno and Abusive Sergeant, and everything dies. I mean, I beat a Paladin without even going underneath it. I had so many 0-cost spells in my hand because I discovered another whatever the 2 mana spell is you can make 0 by playing Naga. Predation.
Yeah.
I discovered another one of those, and then you have like 4 0 mana spells in the deck. And I cleared a Paladin that generated the I feel really bad. The 7 mana Shaman card that has the 2/2s that buff the main thing, the Glug.
Oh, Glug.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went through a Glug to kill them. Whew. Because I managed to get their health lower than the Glug's health and had so many spells in my hand I could take out the 3 2/2s and their face. It felt really strong. I didn't play a whole lot of games, but I played maybe 10 games. It's not an easy deck to pilot, but it does feel strong. It feels like it would still be strong even if Paladin wasn't there. And I can't imagine it's fun for my opponents to be playing against, because it's just I'm doing nothing but amassing cards for like 6 turns, and then I undo whatever damage they did, and then I just play a bunch of stuff and they're dead.
Yeah, I think there's been calls for a while regarding the like Unleash Fel as well, right? Like,
yeah. But I mean, Stheno's getting into like 3 mana Edwin territory of dodging nerfs, right? Like, I mean, like it's. I think that they tried to nerf around Stheno by bringing Predation to 2, and it's clearly not doing it.
Right.
And like 2 of the 3 minions, at least in some of the spell DHs that I've been playing against, I don't know if it's all the time, are like Stheno and Abusive Sergeant. Like, that kind of tells you everything you need to know about it. And it's like, it feels like Stheno is like, Stheno's one of those cards that maybe it's not a huge power outlier, but it is gonna, if it's not already there, just kind of getting boring. You know, that like, that's the way you lose. And again, it's a win condition that it feels like there's nothing you can do about it. Right. Mm-hmm. A lot of times. And I think that's kind of the theme of a lot of the, you know, the feels bad moments in this meta with some of those things are like, there's just a lethal that it doesn't matter in some cases. Right. Or it feels like there's nothing you could do to play around it. I've died of a Stheno from 30 with minions on board, and just like, what am I supposed to do? Right. Like, other than dirty rat it, right? Then well, like,
except in the context of the spell DH, you can't even dirty rat it, right? Yeah. Or patchwork, any of that stuff.
Well, you can
right?
Steam Cleaner the bound souls, which I've done once, and that was
I think that
expensive.
is why Steam Cleaner has been in so many ETCs, right? Yeah. Has specifically. I was wondering, like, what the heck are people playing a Steam Cleaner for? Because I just like wasn't facing a ton of spell DH. But yeah, I think it is for those bound souls, and you're relying on like hitting your Steam Cleaner on 5, like to play before they've drawn too much of their deck. But otherwise, then they can just kind of wait to go bound soul, Setheno, bound soul, abusive, and then still just, pop off.
Yeah. Or even if you like even if they like mess up and like you can still like they can just fizzle it, right? And they fizzle to put it back in the deck. So it's, there's so you could then still, get more bounce souls that way. Like it's very hard to get around it, especially because they're in the bounce soul, so you can't dirty rat it. You have to like Theatar it. And even then, if you're not steam clearing whatever's in the deck, then they just get them out of the next one, right? So it's like it feels very difficult to to play around, and it just kind of leaves players feeling sometimes like there's not a lot of agency there. So I could see them like it feels bad when you lose to that. It feels great when you win with it because you feel like a genius, right? But a lot of times, like when you lose to it, it's just like, well, what am I supposed to do about that, right? Like you just throw up your hands, like, okay, I guess I go next, because like, how was I supposed to win that game?
Yeah, when you lose to it, it still feels like it gives me old school Lifesteal Demon Hunter feels. In terms of just, it's like, okay, well, I guess I didn't kill them in time, and they had the cards they needed, so next.
I don't know. Somehow Il'gynoth always made me feel worse, but I don't know. Maybe it was just we endured it for longer.
There was a lot more math involved with Il'gynoth, I think. Like there was multiplication stuff.
True. Yeah,
there were times tables for Il'gynoth math. Like that was not something you just kind of one does not simply walk into an Il'gynoth lethal.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember having like a Word doc up while I was like learning to play that deck, so I knew what the breakpoints were.
Yeah, I just had like language hackers like Imgur album with all the different permutations to try to remember, because there was no way I was memorizing all of it. And then I mean, I guess outside of the top 3, so just like looking at the Vicious Syndicate report, like just going down through like tier 2, right? So we talked about tier 1, which is pure Paladin, Enrage Warrior, Spell Demon Hunter, and then like tier 2 is Miracle Rogue, Hound Hunter, which they're basically they're getting out of the whole face mid-range debate by just calling it Hound Hunter, which more power to them. Totem Shaman and Relic Demon Hunter. I mean, like assuming Stheno is also going to hit Relic Demon Hunter, I don't know that anything that's necessarily needs to change there.
Yeah.
And I mean, people aren't really playing Miracle Rogue.
Well, if they find a way to be good against Paladin, they will.
Yeah.
I think the new combo Shadow Spell would be good, right? Because it's silence and then deal 2 damage.
Good against what, though?
Against Paladin.
Well, yeah, except and then they just heal you with a weapon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I guess the weapon also solves the big minion issue, right?
It sure does, yeah.
Man.
So you could kill them with your own big weapon. That's an option that's available to you.
Assuming it doesn't take multiple swings, because otherwise they heal.
Yeah. I do think if we're addressing those things, Hollowhound might need to be nudged down a little bit too. Like that's a lot of healing.
Do you think like they make it 2 power or what?
Yeah, maybe. I think 2 power feels a little bit fairer. Like if you want to invest in hand buffing it, then fine, right? Like if you want to invest bananas into it, like that's still fair. Or if you're gonna like blood tap or whatever, if you're doing Death Knight things. But like starting at 3, I mean 9 damage across 3 minions and also 9 healing as a base minion. And I'm not saying it's egregious now, but I do wonder like if we take if you're taking it's pure Paladin and Spell Demon Hunter, I'm assuming they're not going to touch Enrage Warrior because like they just spent 6 months buffing Warrior, that I can't imagine them going and nerfing it now. Maybe they would. I don't know.
I just got this money. What do you
Yeah.
what do you mean you can
I
take
know,
it
right?
away?
I know, right? Like I can't. I could see maybe some things. I don't even know what you would hit in Enrage Warrior, but like I can't imagine them nerfing Enrage Warrior at this point after all they went through just to get it playable. But I mean, unless you wanted to like buff Jam Session up to 3 maybe, but even then I don't think that's that big of a deal. But yeah, like Hollow Hound feels like it would be the next like oppressive thing if those especially because it preys on Enrage Warrior really well, right? Maybe a
Mhm.
little bit too well. And I guess I'm biased because I've been playing a lot of Enrage Warrior and I hate losing to it, but you know, it feels like that's a little bit too much healing for a mid-range aggressive deck to have access to.
Yeah, man, it's so weird. Some of the like dual class DK cards they made because they all had to be runeless
Yeah.
for for the sake of the classes they were mixed with, and I think like I don't know, they kind of had to be strong because otherwise you're hurting two classes. So, but yeah, I don't know. I could let Hollow Hound cook. I feel like, but it is a lot of healing. Definitely, there are games being won strictly off the back of Hollow Hound coming in and arenaing up, and like that's just it. But I think also to your earlier point about Magatha, that like not necessarily. Like sometimes people do continue to have fuel and a whole bunch of cards.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. I think possibly if we're hitting some of these things, I don't know, maybe Alibi could go to like 3,
Yeah,
right?
I
If
wouldn't hate
like
it. I wouldn't hate it.
Alibi is being a problem.
Yeah. Burmage is pretty good. I mean, it's not showing up in the Vicious Syndicate stats necessarily, or at least the top 1K legend. Those stats that I was just quoting were for top 1K legend. It's actually Hound Hunter is tier 1 in when we look at all of legend, right? And Spell Demon Hunter drops down, which makes sense because Spell Demon Hunter is a difficult deck to play.
Right.
But so like yeah, I could see there aren't any mages in tier 1 or tier 2, but I could see a burn mage or a spooky mage getting there. And like the games where you're generating 5-6 solid alibis are pretty annoying. I could even see them bumping that up to 2 damage, but I think that probably kills the card.
Yeah. I mean, it's twice as much, right? Like at that point, it's not even really.
Yeah, because like mage
Much of
kind
a
of needs
defensive
it
tool.
to not die.
But I think a lot of the super defensive tools have been 3 mana, sort of historically, right? Ice Block, of course, is a secret. Timeout in Paladin, the stealth thing for Rogue,
that was
right?
4, was it? Or did they buff it? Did they
It
nerf
got
it to
nerfed
4?
to 4.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But generally, these things have been like 3 mana. So
Yeah, I could see it at 3 mana. It would also kind of make some of the finale stuff a little bit more difficult, right?
yes,
Just being an odd
or at least
mana cost when a lot of the other cards are even, like that could make it a little bit more awkward. Though you do sometimes play Audio Amplifier in the Spooky Mage, which kind of breaks that logic, but whatever.
yeah. But honestly, I apart from those things we've talked about, I don't know that there's a ton else I would want to hit.
You know what I want to hit? I'm just gonna do my usual plea. Do something about Nerubian Vizier, right? Like,
Okay, interesting.
like I think there's a lot. Like it's when I looked at HS Replay today, it was like the second most included card after Astalor. A lot of decks run it. It's giving access to a lot of Discover, and Discover is extremely strong in a 4-set meta. I mean, a little bit less now because people are getting hit in the face, right? But as soon as like those things get toned down, then it's going to go back to a lot of Discover, and I think that that's one of the big reasons that Blood Death Knight's been so resilient before something like a Pure Paladin came along to finally knock it off its perch. But you have it's in all of the Death Knights, it's in Undead Priest, it's in both priests actually. It's in Spooky Mage. It's in I'm trying to think of what else it's in. Oh, it's in Relic Demon Hunter as well because the relic minions are undead.
What?
So like that's just off the top of my head. There are probably a couple others that I'm missing, but like that's a lot of decks to have that much access to relatively and discounted discover on top of it. And I think that
Right.
maybe if we even just like bumped Nerubian, either bump Nerubian Vizier up a mana or bump the discount down to 1.
Yeah, discount
bumping it
down to 1 was my first inclination.
Yeah, I'm not really partial to either, but I think like that card is overplayed right now because it's so powerful and because Discover is disproportionately powerful in a 4-set meta. And I think that like doing something about that card, even if it's temporary, even if they reverse it like they did with School Teacher towards the end of the year when Discover is less powerful at the end of the year, I think that would kind of help a lot to curb some of the power from Discover across the board.
Yeah, that's one of those that like you don't really think of as terribly offensive, but you do see it a lot.
You're not dying to it, right? Like people play, you don't think anything about it, and then you get killed by the card like 3 turns later, and you've forgotten where it came from.
Yeah, it's an interesting situation. I mean, I definitely think something will be touched on Pure Paladin. I think we could definitely see like Steno or something like that touched or something related to it because if nothing else, I think people are just tired of dying to that same thing that they've been dying to for a long time. I'm not sure how much else will get touched. Like I was looking at Hollowhound and it is super annoying to play against, but when I look at HS replay, it's not even one of the better cards in the deck.
Mhm.
It's the fact that it combos with some of the other cards through the arena effect, like Hope of Kael'Thalos is one of the best cards in that deck.
Yeah.
And then Solid Alibi is super annoying to play against. I don't know how you do this. The annoying thing is when people have 4 of them.
Yes,
2 of them
absolutely.
is perfectly fine.
Like if they only play the 2 that are in their deck, and like we could go to like making it not discoverable, but that's not even the problem with Solid Alibi a lot of the time because like that's not going to cover volume up. It's not going to cover raw math when you get something from volume up. It's not going to cover rewinds that are generated, right? Because like a lot of it is getting copies of the cards that were already in your deck, which not making it discoverable is not really going to solve. Like, yeah, you won't get it off of Vast Wisdom. But I mean, Vast Wisdom is a card that you're generating anyway. You won't get it off of Nerubian Vizier, but again, maybe we just deal with Nerubian Vizier and make that played less, and then maybe you see less Solid Alibis, right?
Well, there's Infinitize Magnitude.
That is also a card, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
So what would happen then? Would just Enrage Warrior be the death deck, or is there something maybe lurking beneath that's not being played? That
well, Enrage Warrior is at least
better?
like Enrage Warrior is counterable, right?
Yeah.
Like there are decks you can play that like you can play the control decks, and sometimes you lose to it, sometimes you don't. Like I've definitely lost my fair share of control priests playing Enrage Warrior. I've kind of like it's kind of like 50-50 against the the control priests and the Blood Death Knights. So there are and certainly Mage has been a pretty bad matchup for it, just because of generally the Solid Alibis combined with like things like Blizzard, and all the armor that they can generate, and the fact that you have to leave minions on the board that are potentially vulnerable to Deathborn, and then you can kind of get blown out the other way. So like Mage can be a reasonable counter to it as well. I think that's ultimately like if you have a best deck, but that best deck has reasonable counters, right? Like that's the problem with Pure Paladin right now is that there are really just 2 decks that you can play if you really want to counter it. And Spooky Mage has a very spiky matchup profile, and Spell Demon Hunter is very difficult to play. And Spell Demon Hunter is another one of the problems, right? So like that's kind of the issue with the way that Pure Paladin is winning games. I think that's causing that to be like a best deck that's difficult to have in the meta. Something like when like Unholy Death Knight was like the best deck in the meta, right? Or Frost Death Knight was the best deck in the meta. Like that was annoying, right? But that didn't really feel oppressive because there are things you could do against those decks, right? Like as a control deck or you know, even other aggressive decks, like you had avenues against them. Pure Paladin doesn't feel like it has those kinds of weaknesses right now.
Yeah, I agree with that. I know this is on the show notes as well, but is maybe part of the problem that other decks don't have enough powerful things to do. You mentioned like earlier that you felt like the games were going very long, and I think a lot of that's just like you don't have a lot of lethality to kill the paladin before turn 9 or 10, and then they have time to just assemble pieces or equip the weapon and have one minion stick, and then you're dead.
Or they're healed, right?
Yeah, well, or they're not.
Yeah.
They're really, really not dead.
Yeah. I don't know what, like, I mean, other than maybe like Warlock again, I don't know, but like I'm kind of at a point with Warlock where if you buff it one more time, I think it might just like that might just push it over the edge, right? Because like I'll just look at the tier 3 and tier 4 decks now, right? According to Vicious Syndicate from today. So like tier 3 is Unholy Death Knight, Menagerie Warrior, Undead Priest, Burn Mage, Frost Death Knight, Control Priest, Outcast Demon Hunter, and Imp Warlock. None of those seem particularly underpowered to me. Maybe Imp Warlock, but I don't think Imp Warlock really needs a whole lot of help. And then tier 4 is stuff like Chad Warlock, good, get out. Curse Warlock, which I mean is the curses are not great right now, but the curses that's not really, I don't think we necessarily need to buff them again. I think that's probably fine if the curses aren't great, right? Because I mean that's if Curse Warlock is suddenly one of the better decks, that's gonna get old pretty quickly too. Spooky Mage, Control Warrior, which I mean, you know, whatever. I mean, I guess that's Black Rock and Roll Warrior. That's probably never really going to be... I don't know that you can necessarily buff that anymore and make that viable. And then Thief Rogue, which please don't. So, like, I don't know that there's necessarily... Like, it doesn't feel like anything's necessarily not hitting, per se. And I mean, maybe there's stuff, like, in the mini set that just, like, is completely non-existent, but it doesn't feel like those are non-existent because the cards are bad. It feels like those are non-existent because there's like one dominant deck in the meta that's not allowing you to play a whole lot of varied strategies, right? Like I feel like taking that out of the equation might open up some air for some of those other things to be explored, but right now because you have to play, you're either playing Pure Paladin or you're playing against Pure Paladin, that kind of limits your options in terms of the kinds of things that you're going to be able to utilize.
Yeah. I almost feel like it would have to be more of like a core swap than like changing cards if you really wanted to shake things up. But I don't think they'd be inclined to do anything drastic when we're maybe a month out from new expansion. So or a month and a half. Well, is it a month and a half? I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels both like soon.
Well, I
and
mean,
not that
beginning of
soon.
August, right? So it's like almost 2 months at this point. It's still early June, I guess. But I mean,
Yeah.
We could be surprised. I mean, it always feels like there's something just kind of percolating underneath the surface that gets uncovered whenever the meta opens up like that. Hopefully, well, I enjoyed the rogue what was it, the rogue deck that came out of nowhere last time when they nerfed things, but I think I was one of the few that liked that. But there probably are decks that are being impressed right now that would come to light.
You mean when they buffed Edwin?
Yes.
to 3?
Yeah. I mean, like the one thing I can think of that might need a buff is Overheal Priest, but I don't think you need to buff that. I think you just need more cards. I think it's gonna get. That's something that they've been pretty clear. Like it's gonna get support over the course of the year.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's not there right now. I'm sure that there's like a missing piece that we're gonna get Copium, but like, you know, I don't know that like because if you go too far with Overheal Priest in this kind of a meta, you can definitely go too far, and then you end up having to pull it back anyway. So I don't necessarily know that we need to go there yet. It feels like there's like a proof of concept for Overheal Priest, but it's just not a like a consistent enough deck right now, and that's okay. It has time to get there because it's going to get
Yeah.
more support in future sets.
Yeah, I mean, a like archetype or deck or something is in a good place when you're like, okay, I put all the cards I want in, and I have like 36 cards. What do I cut? Whereas it's much worse if you're like, well, I put in all the cards that feel reasonable in this archetype, and I need 8 more. Like,
Oh no, I'm playing Mana Geode. What happened in my life? What are the
Yeah,
life decisions that led me to this point?
I
right?
don't think
Like,
I think I would run more like other minions before I would put Mana Geode in.
yes.
But yeah, it's needs a little more filling out. And I think it's also just like less reliable that you make stuff happen with buffs. So
Yeah.
it could just be like a 4-card nerfs or something.
Yeah, I think there's still some creativity out there. I faced a Cagehead Death Knight the other day. Are you
Oh,
familiar
yeah.
with?
Ooh.
Yeah, when I saw the Bone Lord Frost Whisper played, I was like, I don't know where this is going, but I have to stick around and find
Oh
out.
my. Yeah.
I had a very brief whirlwind romance with Kibler's Thief Priest. And the first game that I played was against that, and I got the Yelling Yodeler and the Cagehead with the Mysterious Visitor in my hand. And
Oh my god.
I OTK'd the OTK deck, and it was delightful.
So
And then I don't think I won
rude.
another game after that, but it didn't matter. Like, I had that one game, and that was enough.
See, the death rattle thing I've been doing in DK has been with the ghoul. And it is the funniest thing on earth to see people try and clear boards when you have gone like death growl on the ghoul that just what is it on? I forget the name of this ghoul, but the 5/4 that it death rattles and like
Oh,
pukes
the one that
onto
gives you another
minion.
copy of the zombie. Yeah. I don't remember what it is either,
It
but
gives something else the death rattle of summon it again.
yeah.
And yeah, if you death growl that and you've just got your minions like pinging death rattles onto each other and then summoning more, and like there's ways of making where it's just like have this jigsaw puzzle of a board clear. And I've watched people like make a couple trades that felt very intentional, and then corpse explosion, and then I still have like 2 minions at the end of it, and they're like, okay, I give up.
And this is why I'm glad that they put Shard of the Naru in core.
I think there's still some fun stuff buried somewhere. Hopefully, we get to find it.
Yeah. I think it's just a matter of making it feel like you're not like an idiot for playing a deck that can't be pure paladin, right? Like I think like when it's that prevalent, then you kind of need to do something just to make that be not be meta warping, right? And I think that once they do that, I think there's definitely a lot of room in this meta. With a couple of power outliers, which is going to happen in a 4-set meta. Like, this is a tale as old as time at this point. But I think kind of bringing those things down to a more average level will help give a little bit more room for some of those other, like, first couple days of the expansion or first couple days of the mini set decks to kind of get a little bit of room to get some refinement.
Well, I think we've pretty much said all there is to say, and we are running towards our usual, limit on time for this show.
Limit on Edo's capacity to edit throughout the weekend, I think is more what you're trying to say.
Don't. I have no other motive.
I want you to be able to play Diablo this weekend too. Yes. So yes, we should.
Yeah, exactly. Support me being able to still play games because I'm not spending all my weekend editing. I actually have next week off, so obviously I need to get this editing done in a timely manner. But my other show that is much less time sensitive, but I would like to get out this month, the latest episode. That one I will finally take care of on my week off. But We have many folks we'd like to thank. Check out our thanks section on the website at www.coinconcede.com, where you can also find our contact info, our show notes, and our Patreon information. You can monetarily support our show at patreon.com/coinconcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.coinconcede.com. Join our community chats in our Discord at discord.coinconcede.com, and write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at coinconcede, as well as like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/coinconcede. If you would like some CC swag, head on over to our shop at shop.coinconcede.com. Big thank you to our producers, Number Theory, DogeDK, Kresh, Cap, Beef Squatch, David P, Fade to Black, Walu, Jeremy T, Bottlecaps, Grumpy Monk, The Burger Club, Kirk Regan, Forgiven One, and Enraged Chicken.
Before we go to Coin
Concede.
Concedes, speaking of the Patreon, we are working on getting an abbreviated listener league put together between now and the end of the expansion. We're figuring out logistics. There are a lot of spreadsheets involved. We're hoping to be opening up signups by this coming Monday. But it's, it depends on a few things happening. But do keep an eye out for that. Keep an eye on the Discord. We'll make an announcement. It's coming. We're just kind of figuring out. Hat showed me what was involved. There were a lot of spreadsheets that were very scary looking. So we need some adult supervision, but I think we have a plan to get there. So keep an eye on that on the Discord. But anyway, yes.
The number of terrifying spreadsheets we have.
Yes.
I
work with data for a living, and these spreadsheets are terrifying. So that should just kind of give you an idea of like.
Yeah, I mean, eventually we're gonna have to figure it out for like the payouts and everything as well. And
yeah,
it's a lot, but we're working on it. We're also working on doing bonus episodes again, because I don't know if y'all noticed, but even with Hat before the last like 6 months, we just have utterly failed to do bonus episodes, but we want to do them again. And maybe it'll be good to get some questions in from folks again. Maybe every once in a while we'll do other games. Maybe we'll talk about Diablo. Could happen.
Maybe we could talk
that's
about
one
Diablo.
that we both enjoy.
Yes,
could happen.
I might
I'll
even
talk
be able
about
to convince
Zelda
Maureen
with
to
someone
join us
else.
For that. Maureen even might be willing to join us.
That would
for
be
that.
exciting.
Yeah.
So anyway, good things to come. Ignore the fact that the show is being held together by duct tape right now and sheer grit. But yeah, we're coming up on 400 episodes, and the Wicked Weiss era will continue in full swing. But yeah, let's go ahead and close off with Coin Concedes. Wicked, you are the only one who's written anything so far.
Well, I'm going to, first of all, Coin Concede to Discord for giving me my name change and letting me keep Wicked Good as my username today. So
seems important.
Yes, I was very happy that I didn't have to start making up a new one. So that was very, very reassuring when that popped up today. And also a Coin Concede to Cap, who was nice enough because he was in the Diablo early access and went ahead and set up the Coin Concede clan, which you can search for and join in that. I believe he said he was going to make me an admin if he hadn't already, so I'll be able to approve. You may need to just throw there. We have a Diablo channel in the Discord. You may just need to throw your name in there just so we know who you are. But I mean, if you're searching for the Coin Concede clan, we'll probably just let you in anyway. But thank you to Cap for doing that and also not making me feel too jealous while he was enjoying Diablo this weekend that I was not.
Rizen?
Yeah, I wanted to Coin Concede to you two for having me on. I appreciate it. It's been a lot of fun. I also wanted to Coin Concede just to the Hearthstone community in general. I would have quit playing this game a long time ago if it wasn't for the excellent community that is built up around the game. I have a lot of friends. I mean, I've stayed at people's houses I've met in the game. The community is amazing. So I'd like to Coin Concede to everyone who's listening, anyone who's a part of the Hearthstone community. I really appreciate everyone. And just add Happy Pride Month to everyone.
I got my Hearthstone Pride T-shirt this week. So if it wasn't, I have to wash it first because it was too itchy to wear. But I'm washing it and I will have it available to wear. But it's very nice.
I wanted to get two things. They were out of slides by the time I made the decision that was one that I wanted. So I got socks, which is less good, right? Because I mean, how often do you show people your ankles? I don't do that very much.
I mean,
But
maybe you'll start.
maybe can wear some like capris or something. I don't know. I'm not a shorts person, but I haven't gotten my t-shirt yet, or I need to like check the mail or something. We'll see. So, but definitely excited for all that stuff. I am gonna go ahead and coin concede to Hat because it has been, of course, incredible learning all the things that he did that we never really thought about for the show, but also it's been incredible just like watching him fulfill his role as associate community manager. And it's just been so awesome, even though of course we miss him. He's just really good at his job.
He is. I mean, he was doing it for free
And
for a long time, so you know.
yeah, and I, kind of didn't really see much of that because it's only recently that we've been kind of in that Discord, which he's been there for some time. But in terms of the creator Discord, so I didn't get to see as much of like when he was doing all this stuff for free, right? So I don't have a good frame of reference to compare, but yeah, just the way he kind of takes charge and lays things out plainly for everyone in terms of like how things are going to go, what we can and can't do. And I think the one thing where I'm like, oh yeah, you've just always been doing this, and like also that's kind of weird is like with bug fixes and feedback, right? He seems to be always on top of like bug reports, what they know or don't know, and I'm just like, this I could imagine you doing before, which is ridiculous because how would like you're communicating with people that you're not even on their team yet. But
now he can see the Jira tickets. Like he couldn't even see those before.
yeah,
You know?
yeah, exactly. So yeah, and we were hoping to be able to get him for 400, but that seems unlikely. So may just end up being a normal show that's sort of special in our hearts. We'll see what happens.
But yeah, well, until then, keep calm and enjoy your horns while you can. And if you see us on ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
I am stopping
Stopping recording.
just shy of 2 hours.
Yeah, no, that was great.
Yeah, no, it was very good.
Good
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah, no, this was great.
I think particularly for a like not much news week, that was really good.
Right.
Okay, how do I save this? I'm worried I'm going to lose it.
So you can
yeah.
save as an Audacity file if you're just worried about it and want to have a copy on your computer. But then
Save
what I actually
project will
need
do
for
that. That's save project
Right.
when you do that.
yeah, what I actually need is for you to export as MP3.
I have a mechanical keyboard, so I apologize if that's super loud.
No worries.
Doesn't matter. We're
Yeah.
done recording. Doesn't matter.
Yeah. It's now it, I mean, Edel doesn't have to edit anything out that's, from this point forward, so you're all set. I think I am going to who can we raid? I guess we can raid Sway. Because Sway's streaming. Oh, I can't do that from there. I have to do it from here. Okay.
Does quality, bitrate mode, channel mode, any of that matter? Or just use defaults for exporting as MP3.
Yeah, I think just export as MP3. Oh, I always forget to tell people. Did you record in stereo or mono?
I do not know. So for the format options, it says I can do stereo or force export to mono. Does it matter?
I think if you force export to mono, that should be fine.
That should be fine.
Is that what you want me to do?
Yes. Yeah. It just makes it easier for me to see. So occasionally it has like a meaningful difference because weird stuff that's happened with me before where like I was only coming through in one ear for evil, but largely just being in mono instead of stereo just makes it easier for me to see the wavelengths and like be able to edit. Because with stereo, there's like the two, because it's got you for the left and for the right, and so everything's just smaller and a little harder to see. I don't think I'm gonna edit out so many this time.
Yeah.
That
Anyway,
took a while.
listeners, as much as I'm sure that this is exciting for you, we're gonna go raid Sway Bay and go watch her play Battlegrounds, and we will see you next week. Have a wonderful night. Bye.
Bye.